everyone. Welcome to Everything and Nothing. All right, let's get started. Let's talk about what are we going to talk about today? Let's have a conversation about feeling good, because that's what it was like today. Today was a day where, and I don't know if you have this kind of days, but today was one of those days where I woke up, I felt rested. I didn't sleep more than any other day or less. I slept the right amount, or the amount, I guess, that my body needed. And when I opened my eyes, I reached for my phone to see what time it was. And it was actually the time that I thought it was. Like in my mind, I was like, oh, it's probably like 7:48. And it was. And it was almost like, hey, I'm kind of in tune today. So I got up and I looked outside, and it was such a beautiful day this morning. It was like very bright, the sun was out, little birds were out singing, the trees were bright green, well, the ones that are green, because most of them are still naked, but you get where I'm going with this. So anyway, I got up, I did my usual routine, got my little, I call them monkeys, but they're not monkeys, they're three dogs, but they're my little monkeys. I got my monkeys ready, and we went outside. We went outside to walk for a bit. And as I was walking outside, I got this message from a couple of people. So I sent out my book to a couple of people to get some feedback to see, did it flow? Did it make sense? Um, did I miss anything? You as a reader, is there anything in here that you feel like, oh, you would be nice to have this thing? And I got 3 responses from 3 different people. And they were all saying how they enjoyed it. And so I'm outside walking with my dogs, enjoying this beautiful sun, reading these beautiful messages. And I can't help but like smile. Like I'm smiling and I'm thinking and I'm feeling, it's more than feeling, like, like this feeling, like, I don't even know what the word is. So sometimes when I do life coaching, or when I'm coaching people in general, I'll ask them, how does that feel? How does that sound? And sometimes they'll describe it right away. Like they'll find a way to tell me, oh, it sounds like this or it feels like that. But there are times when they tell me, I can't, I don't know how to describe it. I don't know. I can't find the words. And what I tell them when that happens is, then just make a sound. At the end of the day, that's what words are. They're sounds. They're sounds that we've made, and we gave them meaning, and we gave them definitions. But, sounds. So it sounded like, hmm, hmm, that's what it sounded like. Like, wow, this feels really good. It felt like a bright, sunny morning. And it was beautiful timing too, because I had just decided that that I was going to launch the book Thursday. And I figured I'll launch the book Thursday. And when I get feedback, I can always publish another version, like a second edition. But as I was walking with my dogs, as I was feeling this gratitude, you know, like it was just amazing. And I was reflecting on, why did it feel so amazing? Was it that people were giving me an acknowledgement? Was it that they were giving me a recognition? Was it that, like, why did it feel so good? Because I'm always curious, like, now that I'm here, why? And I check with myself. And what I realized is it felt good because the intention behind the book is bigger than I could imagine, which is why I'm surprised that I started with this book, not the other one. I had thought the other book was going to go first, but I'm still working on that one. It's coming out. So this book is the one that's coming out Thursday, has a message about humanity, has a message about the importance of recognizing the human aspect of ourselves in two specific paths. One of them is insurance, because I've worked with people in insurance for a long time. And the stories I share in there are related to insurance. So people in insurance can relate and say, okay, I get that. I understand that. Thank you. But the other path is innovation. I work in innovation, and I, on another episode, I think it was the second episode I did on Everything and Nothing, I talked about innovation and how I got involved in it and why I'm still doing it. But the point of the story is the message is really about being in touch, being connected to our human aspect, to our human elements. And in my opinion, the more connected we are to those human aspects and to those human elements, the more awareness we have. And the more awareness we have about what we do, what we choose to do, how we choose to do it, and the impact that that has on other humans. And that matters, in my opinion. Because when I think of life, and I think of creation, I think of everything in life, the trees, the animals, the birds, the waters, everything. But a lot of the times it's like, can we start with the human part first? Because that's what we are. And if we can connect to that, if we can explore what that's like, if we can become aware of it, then the choices we make, the way we show up, will impact other humans. And in my years of working in innovation, that was one of the biggest messages I was working through. And when I would get that message across, that's when the people started really opening up and they started really empathizing with themselves, empathizing with the team, and then empathizing with the customer. And that mattered because everything we do, like I said, will impact everything else. So it's important to have that awareness. And yeah, I was very surprised. And at the same time, I'm very happy that it's this book, that it's in this way. And as I was walking around this morning, feeling all of this gratitude, I realized it's a reminder to people to connect with themselves, to connect with that human aspects, the feelings, the perspectives, and understand them and explore them and be curious about them. And then show up with their teams, with that same approach, because it starts with us. It starts with us. And I always remind people I always remind people that you are a leader to someone. There's someone out there that's looking up to you, whether you're a whether you have children or not, first of all. Because a lot of people will say, well, I don't have children. So like no one's looking up to me. And um and I always remind them that just because you don't have children doesn't mean nobody's looking up to you. Or when I talk to even interns, sometimes organizations will send their interns for team coaching. So I can do some training with them about innovation, about the methodologies, and then they go back into the organization with a lot more knowledge and ready to go. And even with them, I tell them, no matter who you are, no matter what role you have, there's always someone looking up to you. If you reflect on that, just take a moment and reflect on that. And I bet you it's true. Like, I think about my little brother and sister. Well, they're not that little anymore, but younger. You know, when I was younger, well, I've always been their older sister. When I was younger, they looked up to me, right? Even when I would get annoyed by it, like my little sister will follow me around and I would be like, oh, why can't she just leave me alone? But I was her big sister. You know, she was looking up. She was wondering, you know, watching how I behaved, how I moved, how I dressed. And yes, you know, she's still her person. But how I showed up impacts her decisions to move forward. Same with my brother, you know. And so in my early 20s, I haven't given birth to humans, but I've been in a mother role a couple of times. So in my early 20s, I was married and he had 2 kids and they would come on the weekends. And the little girl would look up to me. She would notice how I behaved. She would notice how I did my hair. She would notice everything because that's what kids do. When I was an instructor, you know, my students looked up. They were paying attention to my techniques. They were paying attention to how I showed up. The assistants that I had as I was an instructor, they also looked up. So no matter where we are, think about you and the roles that you had. There's always someone looking up. You know, there's always someone looking up. The neighbor, your kids' friends, colleagues at work. And in some communities, you know, there are people that take leadership roles by choice. Sometimes it's by chance. Sometimes it's an opportunity that comes up and people will choose to say, yes, I'll do it. I want this role. And I observe a lot when I go to places. I observe how people behave. I'm mindful of how I behave, how I show up, especially in spaces or places where I decided to take a leading role, like if I'm facilitating a session or if I'm being a coach, if I'm being hired to be a coach. Even when I'm doing speaking engagements, right? There's people looking up, listening to my message, to my voice, to how I show up. So I pay attention, you know, I look around and I see. And sometimes it's sad. I'm not saying I'm perfect by any means. But I've had experiences where, you know, the people that were there leading a community, a session, a meeting, they have really poor behavior. And it's really tricky, right? It's really tricky because I know on one hand, it's like, we're all humans. We're all trying to do the best that we can. totally get it. And on the other hand, there's a very thin line of being mindful, not perfect, mindful. One of my coaches, Lisa Nichols, I went to a lot of her workshops, and she coached me on several things. And she used to always remind us, we don't want perfection, we want progress. And that's what I think about when I think about leadership. No, we don't want perfect leaders. We want progress in the way that leadership is done. Progress from the way it used to be, and progress forward. I don't know if there's many things that means progress backwards, although sometimes it feels like that's where we're headed. But I guess it's an option too. We can't force anything on anyone. But what I'm getting at is it's a very tricky place to be. And as you know, everything I share here, it's based on my perspective, based on my experiences, based on what I feel, what I think. And I can tell you it's tricky. I don't know how it is for you. I mean, we've been talking, or I've been talking for about 16 minutes, 15 minutes. And I invited you to reflect on you as a leader who's looking up to you. And then look at the leaders around you, because then we're looking up to someone, right? It's like this cycle of being a student and a teacher at the same time. And like I tell some of my friends, it doesn't end. It has no end. Because for it to have an end, everything has to be at a standstill. And it's not. Everything's in constant movement and shifting and changing. And as a result of that, we have to keep adjusting, and shifting and adapting. So when I started seeing it that way, things started feeling better. I wasn't chasing perfection anymore. I wasn't chasing an end. I wasn't chasing, for a long time, it's like, be the best version of you. And I'm like, well, I'm constantly being the best version of me based on what I know. And then sometimes I have tough days, bad days, challenging days. Let's call them challenging days. And when those days show up, I get to do the best that I can. But it's constant, constant, constant. And when I choose to see it that way, it feels easier. The journey feels easier. It almost feels like fun. Like I wonder what's going to come up next. So yeah, reflecting on leadership and how we show up and how others show up. And one thing that I feel it's important is to choose where and how we show up. Like, I honestly believe that we're all trying to show up to be the best that we can. And sometimes it's tricky because there's so much happening. There's so much change and shift. And I do feel that if we don't have that awareness and that reminder of responsibility, sometimes our behaviors and our choices and decisions can actually have a negative impact on other people. And some people may completely disagree with me on this, and that's okay. Remember, different perspectives. There's a very, very fine line between people that are humble, that are saying, oh, I'm not a leader. I'm just here to do, what needs to be done. Because to a certain degree, no, there is a responsibility, and it's important to acknowledge there are people looking up to you. There are people, that are coming to you. They are coming to this space because they feel safe. So therefore, everything you do or don't do will have an impact on those people. And I've met people that will flat out say, that's not my problem. If somebody has a problem with something I do or don't do, then that's the other person's work. To a certain degree, yes, I agree. And then, no. I feel like if somebody makes a choice to be in a leadership role, to lead something, to show up as some kind of figure that someone, if someone shows up to be that, if someone shows up to lead, to take responsibility, then it's important to be aware and be mindful, because that's when the ego shows up, right? Like in the innovation sessions, I always tell people we need to put the ego aside. And then we have to be careful not to put the ego too far aside, because then we start getting stepped on. So it's such an interesting life that we have. And that's a whole other episode, like about the ego and what it is. For today, just to keep it to the point, I'm talking about from the perspective of the ego being a helper within us to remind us of where boundaries have been crossed. And sometimes it's important to have it there to recognize when other egos are around. Otherwise, I have been in situations where I'm trying to be, or I'm not trying, I am being humble, and I am being obedient, and I am being collaborative, and I am being kind, and I am being empathic. And I'm being so much of that to the extreme that I don't realize when people's behavior are starting to be borderline abusive. And then I'm wondering why I'm feeling so heavy and why I'm feeling guilty and why I'm feeling confused. And then I realized, oh, yeah, I probably should have had a little bit of my awareness of, sensing how safe something is. And usually my ego is there. My ego is like, hey, you might want to watch it there. And I'll know it because it'll give me a warning like, hey, we might want to shift this or I'm coming out. And when it comes out, it's not, it's kind of like lesson. And it gives a little attitude, kind of like, watch out. So I don't want it to go there. I have had it there before in different situations. And I don't hate my ego. I have a healthy relationship with it, as healthy as I can have it. And I'm grateful for it, kind of like anger. Anger comes out, and I know anger comes out right at the point where it wants to remind me you're about to give in, you're about to disconnect, you're about to negotiate something that's non-negotiable. Why? That's what my anger says. So whenever I feel the anger coming up, I'm reflecting, okay, what am I giving into? What am I about to negotiate that I know it's not negotiable? Because there's certain things within me that have very clear boundaries. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I don't want people talking to me like I'm an idiot. I don't know many people that like that. I don't, but I have allowed it several times for different reasons. I have allowed it out of love. I have allowed it out of somebody telling me that's an authority, you need to respect them. I have been in situations at work where I was not respected as a colleague, as a human being. And I stayed. I stayed there. I negotiated my non negotiables for different reasons. Maybe because I really needed the money and I had to work. Maybe because I really just started to believe maybe I'm wrong somehow. I remember I had this job where the owner of the business was very abusive to everybody except me and her business partner. But everyone else, she was extremely rude, like rude. She made quite a couple cry, and she wouldn't do it to me. So I stayed because I kept thinking, well, she doesn't do it to me. I don't know how I ended up thinking that was okay until she did it to me. She did it to me, and I know I'm laughing and it's not funny, but it's like, I still remember exactly how you went down. She literally said, she came into the office. I was talking to one of my colleagues. She walked up and she was really angry about something. So she was having a meltdown. And I laughed. Sometimes I kind of like, I just laughed right now. I do that sometimes. And I laughed and she looked at me and she said, if you laugh like that one more time, I'm going to slap you. And when I heard it, I thought, well, that's kind of a shock. And the only thing I could say, see, there's the ego. The only thing I could say was, I would love to see that. And she said, oh, really? Why? And I said, well, so I can slap you back. Now, remember, by that time, I had already been married and divorced. I had divorced an abusive person. So I had already been through physical abuse. I had already been through being kicked and punched and all of that stuff. So when someone like that came and says something like that, of course, my natural response based on my past experiences is to say, if you do that, I will defend myself because I've done it before. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't okay. It was not okay for me to stay all those months working there, seeing how that person was treating other people. And by doing that, I was quietly supporting something I don't support, something I don't believe in. And when I saw it happen to me, it really invited me to reflect, why am I still here? What am I doing here? If this doesn't feel good, why am I still here? Is this really someone I consider a leader? And she is. She was a leader to her team. She had a successful business. But is that the kind of leader I want to support? Is that the kind of behavior I want to support? So it really got me thinking, why was I still there? Why was I still, what was I waiting for? And it was a big, big moment in my life because once I realized that, I opened up a wound and I started reflecting on when I was married and when I stayed and why did I stay so long and why didn't I leave right away and how proud I was when I finally said, enough, I'm leaving. And then here I was again, not in a, romantic marriage relationship, but still in a relationship with another human. And it started becoming clear to me, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. Again, I'm not looking for perfection. I know we all have good days and bad days. The way I see it is we do have good days and bad days. And certain people that choose leadership roles, it's important to have enough awareness and support to be able to manage, things, behaviors better so that we don't lash out to someone else. Because I understand, there's a lot of people that I've spoken to that, remind me of, well, that's just people that are hurting. And I'm thinking, I understand, I get that. Then get help so you don't go around hurting other people. But then there's some people that say, well, we have to draw a line. Like, and I'm thinking, why is it okay for some people to do that? If it's not okay for others, and why is it okay for them? And so, yeah, I don't know, I have a very clear, it's probably because of the situations or the experiences I had in the past, that for me, it's important. For me, it's important that I don't allow that stuff in my life. Because if I allow it once, it'll just keep repeating itself. I've been there before. I saw it. I saw it with, in my 20s when I was married, where it was like over and over and it kept repeating itself. And I just kept thinking, okay, it'll get better. He was a leader in the community. People looked up to him. And then I saw it again in that job with that person, with that boss. And I saw it again, throughout my years working in organizations, going in to do consultancy or to do coaching. And, I noticed it. It's there. And I get to choose where I work. I get to choose, and I want to choose to work with people that, again, I'm not looking for perfection because I'm not perfect. I'm looking for people that, even if they know they have something that is tricky or challenging, that they'll be aware of it and say, I have this thing I'm working on, or I need support with it. That's respectful for me. And the reason why that matters, and the reason why that's so important, is because if we surround ourselves long enough with that behavior, with those patterns, we start becoming that ourselves, even if we don't want to. We start like becoming part of that spiral, part of that behavior. And it starts small. It starts with, well, you justify it once, like that's just the way they are. They're just having a bad day. Oh, it's only like that when they get upset. Or it's only like that when they're really stressed. Or, well, they haven't done it to me. Or they must have their good reasons. And I question that. And then I often times when I see those things happening, I reflect on myself, like, how am I showing up? How am I doing? Because I do believe in that. Treat others the way you want to be treated. So I want to check, like, how am I getting treated like that? Am I treating like that? Am I treating others like that? Is that why this is happening? And I'm very mindful when I do that reflection, that I'm not getting caught up in wounds or in projections. Some people will project that, and especially if they know that you've had experiences like that, they'll project it on. They'll say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't done anything. This must just be you. I've seen this happen. I've seen it happen to me, and I've seen it happen in organizations where, certain managers will behave a certain way with certain teams and certain colleagues, and then they behave completely different with one person or a couple of people, and they're completely rude. Like, I understand it's not about a whole kumbaya, let's all hug and hold hands and be happy. Believe me, no, that's not what I'm saying. Because I do believe that there are times that we meet people with whom we just don't connect. And that's okay. We have nothing in common. But the one thing we connect is that awareness and that knowing that we're human beings and we want to respect each other. I respect you for being very loud and bouncy and happy all the time. And that a bouncy person respects me for being more quiet and reserved. And we just don't mix, and that's fine. You know, the water's still water and the oil's still oil, and they're better when they're not mixed. Unless you're making pierogies, apparently. Because when you make pierogies on a frying pan, you need to mix oil and water. And believe me, they still don't get along, but at least they get the work done. But it's painful. Anyway, back to where I was. I'm not saying that everybody should get along and we all have to love one another. I believe that we can love people and we can respect people from a distance if that's better for both people, you know? Like, there's some people that I know that when we collaborate in a project, we do amazing things in a project. Outside of the project, not really, because we don't really have anything in common. And that's okay. I do believe that's okay. It's one of the things I tell teams when we're working together. I tell them, okay, let's look at what we have in common here. Let's look at what is the intention here and how we're going to work through this. And afterwards, if some of you don't want to talk to each other, that's okay. You don't have to go hang out and have beer and all that stuff. But we do have to have an agreement of respecting one another, you know, respecting each other's voices, respecting each other's perspectives, and treating each other with respect, acknowledging each other, you know. If someone sends an email, reply to it. If someone sends a text, reply to it. Oh my goodness. I was once, not too long ago, I was working with this person and we were going to start a business together. And then another person showed up and now it's going to be the three of us. And the third person, somewhere along the lines, decided that they didn't like project management because they felt it was annoying and they felt it was overwhelming and they felt like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to commit to days of the week. I don't want to commit to hours of the week. I just want to show up when I want to show up and we're going to work when I want to work. And so I said, well, that's not going to work. We're not going to get anything accomplished if we could just sit down and agree to the bare minimum of commitments. And that person decided to just ignore me completely. I would send emails and messages and call and be like, hey, can you send me your availability? Can you commit to what days next week so we can plan better? Silence. I mean, it was like a complete, disregard. I find that rude. I find that disrespectful. And so I tell team members, if we're going to work together, I'm not saying we have to be best buddies. I'm saying, can we acknowledge each other as team members? And 9 out of 10 times, they'll all say yes. It's the bare minimum they can do to make it an enjoyable journey as a team. And believe me, there's always one that is just out on their own. Nobody judges them, but when that person shows up, they include them, they talk to them. That's beautiful. So again, we're all looking at each other. We all have a responsibility, in my opinion, especially when we choose to take on a role of leadership. There's a responsibility that comes with that. And yes, I understand we're human. And yes, I understand we have crappy days and stressful days and whatever days. I get that. And we still have a responsibility. So it's important to have someone or a place where we can go and vent safely, respectfully, not in an abusive way. And it's important for the other side, the us, that believe in that we don't get caught up in that mess, because eventually we will come out behaving that way. If that's the way people are behaving, even if we fight it, we will eventually end up taking it out on someone. Maybe not that person directly, but someone else. Maybe it'll impact us in a way that we go home and we start an argument for no reason. So it matters. It matters a lot. Yeah. So that's what today's conversation is about. I started off talking about waking up, having this amazing day of sun and warmth and bird singing, which, by the way, turned into a snowy day, and it's been snowing all afternoon. I think it's been snowing for like 8 hours, but off and on, and the snow doesn't seem to stick. So it's good. But we went from that. We went on to leadership, that in my opinion, we're a leader to someone. Someone's always looking up to us, leadership roles, what that means, the human side of it all, right? And it all was leading toward this conversation. So like I said, some of these conversations are really everything and nothing. Some of them will be very specific. And like, last week was all about authenticity, and I was talking to Carrie about it and what that was like for her and what it meant, and that's pretty cool. Some other conversations that I'm going to share here with you are literally conversations where we're just in a space, just me and you, unless you have it on speaker and other people are listening, but just you and me and you having a reflecting moment. And this one was really all about the book, which, by the way, I didn't think it was going to be that one that was going to go first. And yeah, this book that's coming out, it's all about the human aspect and why it's important to be aware of it and why it matters, especially when it's related to empathy, the importance of having empathy with ourselves, and to be mindful not to get too open to empathy, because then we start, taking on too much that's probably not ours. And I talked about leadership and moments, wake up call moments when we start seeing behaviors and we get to reflect, like, what do we do with that, right? What do we want to do with that? Is that in alignment with who we are? And by not doing anything, are we supporting that which is happening to others? And yeah, I brought it all the way down to being mindful and respectful to each other as human beings. Just acknowledging each other. Yeah. So leadership, humanity. Who are you? Who's looking up to you, and who are you looking up to? And that's why it's so important to like be ourselves. I notice when I'm happy and silly and just laughing at, like, genuinely, that's how I enjoy my days. If you were to see me, like, I wake up and I'm talking to my dogs and I'm talking to my cat and I'm just talking, and I'm just like, oh, and this and that. And if I'm not talking, I put on music and I'm dancing and I'm singing. That's how I want my life to be. That's it. And there's so much flow and so much creativity when I do that. And I notice when I surround myself with people that are not into that vibe, that prefer other behaviors, other vibes, I don't function as well. I just don't. And I'm aware that other people need the opposite of that. Other people need silence and a little more seriousness, and their humor is different. And that's okay. What I'm inviting, what I'm saying here is the importance of what are we doing to support our joy, to support our core values, whatever those are. And how are we staying aware of how we are impacting others? Yeah. So that's pretty much the conversation for today. I'm going to leave it at that. Feel free to share any comments, send me messages. Thank you to those that have been sending messages. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for listening. Feel free to share with whoever you think would benefit from this conversation. This is a vision that I had. This is a space that I wanted. I felt it. And I wanted to create it specifically for these moments of reflection, moments of just a conversation, just like that. And other times, a dialogue with other people, which, by the way, I have some scheduled. I have some people coming up. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about, here, I'll tell you, I have them written down. We're going to talk about relationships. Let me see. What else have I got? I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for progress, says my coach. I've made a lot of progress. I'm here. I followed the vision. Okay, so there we go. I have people coming in. We're going to talk about innovation. We're going to talk about relationships, friendships, and resilience. There's another person that's coming in, and we're going to talk about connection. Yes, I have someone that's going to come in. We're going to talk about cold plunging. And yeah, I have a couple of people talking about that, just different perspectives, like from a male and from a female perspective, different age groups too. I think it's pretty cool. And yeah, and there'll be more to come, I'm sure. But those are the ones I have right now on the list. Anyway, that's it for today. I feel like that was a good share. It feels good. And I'm grateful. I'm happy and I'm grateful that I'm following this guidance, this drive that's clear and clear every time. It feels good to show up to do this. It feels good to write that book, to launch it. It feels good when I translate it. It feels good when I do the other one. It feels good when I do all 10, you know? Okay. Perfect. So with that, I hope you have an amazing, amazing rest of your time, rest of your day, your week, whatever time you're listening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you. It means the world. When you listen, you're helping me realize my vision and my purpose just by showing up, by supporting. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, until next time, have a great one. Bye.